Організаційні вопроси ще. Микола, ти запустив, да, запис?
Так, я запустив.
Да, отлично. У нас зараз двомовна трансляція українською мовою у всіх земной шарик переклад. Кожен може вибрати українську мову або англійську мову, і буде трансляція двома мовами всі презентації. Не всі, а конкретно експерта FiBL. Тому, можливо, переключення зверху, там у вас буде варіант вибрати, яку мовну трансляцію ви хочете вибрати. Сьогодні у нас тема обробіток ґрунту та підбір техніки, методи боротьби з бур'янами, знаряддя та механізми. Даний захід проводиться за підтримки Швейцарії в рамках швейцарсько-української програми розвиток торгівлі завищеної доданої вартості в органічному та молочному секторах України, що впроваджується
within the framework of the project of the higher value added trade from organic academy and the dairy sector in Ukraine, which is supported by the Ukrainian Swiss project. A lot of questions came from the people who are cultivating land at the at the household plots of land, and they have developed the methodology to fight the weeds, and they are actually cultivating their small plots with a hose. And this is good for the small plots. But when we are talking about the large areas, and we are going to have the seminar with the practitioners, for example, Niva company with 4,000 hectares, and Sergii Kozin is representing agroecology. They have 6,500 hectares, and you can understand that you can use the hose to cultivate the soil at these huge fields, and they are going to share the experience how to work with the weeds on such large areas. And Nicolas, the expert of field, is going to share his experience of managing the weeds in Europe in the organic farms. So now, we are going to discuss the technology and the special tools in the organic agriculture, and Nicolas is going to deliver this report, and this is the representative of the Scientific Research Institute of FiBL in Switzerland. Nicolas, could you please start sharing your presentation? In Ukrainian, I hope.
Hello, everyone. There is the presentation. Everyone can see my my slides.
Так.
Do you see in full screen or do you see the presentation screen?
It's a presentation screen. It's not a full screen, please,
Okay,
Nicolas. Maybe you can improve it.
Yep. Let me start again.
Now it seems it's okay now. It's okay.
Yeah, looks better. It's okay now. But
it's English. Could you please share it in Ukrainian?
Yes, it's not the good one. Sorry.
Nicolas, please start your presentation in Ukrainian, and I will also demonstrate my screen in English after you.
Yeah, sorry, it worked well first time.
You should share the whole screen.
Yeah, it's coming, I think.
Yes, now? We can see beautiful view.
Yeah, now it's coming up now.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, full screen, great.
Okay, sorry, I'm in the other office. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicolas Lefebvre. I'm an agronomist working at FiBL, specialist in Eastern European arable crops in organic. And this afternoon, I'm going to present to you topic about specific tillage tools and weed control strategies. So this is the guidelines of today, the program of today. We will first discuss tillage equipment, mainly regarding specificities for organic. What is the role of tillage equipment in organic? Their specificity in organic, and also additional equipment, additional machineries for organic, not only tillage. Afterward, we will discuss weed control strategies. What are the factors that are promoting weeds? What are the different strategies to control weeds? And I will also present some specific strategies to avoid, or at least to improve indirect control of weeds. And the third chapter will be about specific mechanical weed control equipment, which is already well known, I guess, from the practitioners, but we will go into details, so maybe we will have a slightly different vision upon this equipment. So let's start straight with the tillage equipment, the role, their specificities, and also other equipment which can help us control the weeds. That's the main topic today. So what is the role of our tillage equipment in organic? This is first, these equipments are used for weed management, maybe destruction of living weeds, burying the seed stock or the residues of weeds. It might be used to incorporate fertilizer or compost or lime or whatever product input we spread on the soil. It's also used to prepare a favorable seedbed. What is favorable? It might be flat, fine, clean of any weeds, and firm. It's also used to obtain favorable soil structure or porosity. This is more in depth. And last but not least, tillage equipment in organic are also more or less some fertilizer spreader, as they are used to promote mineralization by injecting oxygen in the soil. It's used to promote mineralization and then directly crop nutrition. So what are the specificities of tillage equipment when it comes to organic? What we need on this equipment is large overlapping between the shares, between the working parts, and usually no roller or no heavy roller on the back of these machines. So it's rollerless consumption. Why? Because with almost every pass of tillage, with almost every operation, we try to kill the weeds, and a roller on the back will directly push back and plant back these living weeds into the soil and promote their revitalization. So this is sometimes quite difficult to find new equipment without heavy roller on the back, but this is something that really had to have the focus of farmers. 50% of overlapping, usually farmers are asking what is good overlapping. For me, 50% is good, meaning, I mean, it's optimal, meaning if you have 20 centimeters in between two tines, two share, then the working sweeps must have 30 centimeters. So we have 50% of overlapping. The more shallow you operate also, this is usually the case with weeding operation and weed destruction operation in organic. The more shallow you operate, the larger you can go with the same tractor. And this is already a very good point for soil structure conservation. Another equipment which is maybe less common in Ukraine, Eastern Europe, also in the whole Eastern Europe, is the rotary cultivator, which sometimes can be used to completely destroy living weeds in one pass and perfectly when it's well set. The usual settings and the most important settings of this machine is the rate between the rotation speeds and the the speed of the tractor, the linear speed of the tractor. So also to make sure that every blade is at least to make sure that the whole surface of the soil is touched by the blades. It is a slower operation than the usual cultivator, but it's one pass and one pass destroy alls, let's say. Higher fuel consumption, higher spare part cost, even if in the black soil of Ukraine there is not much sand, as they are not very wearing soils, so it's not really a huge problem, but still it's slower, it takes much more power, and they are quite expensive machine. But for some application, this machine can really get rid of all living weeds in one pass. This is usually mostly used in a more rainy, more wet region of Europe, northwestern Europe. And also, it's really promotes erosion by the wind or by the rain, because it leaves a very fine, very refined soil on the top. Usually, when we think about tillage and organic, it's about plowing mainly. And I used to say plowing works better when you don't use it, or at least when you use it at least as possible. And this is valuable, and this is valid for, let's say, every tillage operation. Intervene as little as possible, as much as necessary. So plowing is not always necessary, and the less you will use it, the more you will see the effect. If you are turning every year the same seed stock from bottom up and so on, you are kind of conserving the seeds, and you are diluting the seeds in the whole profile. If you keep the deep plowing with the complete turning, as you see on the bottom picture, with all the top layers going down in the ground, if you keep this operation only for one or two crops which are very weed sensible in your rotation, then you can make sure that bringing back some bottom soil after 3 or 4 years, this bottom soil will be much less invaded by weeds once you bring it up. Sorry. So the less you use it, the more effective it will be when you really need it. About tillage also, trying inorganic to bring back and to improve soil health. We will try to reduce as much as possible the intensity of tillage operation. So defining the real need for deep tillage is really important. Some crops are doing very well with minimum tillage and shallow tillage, like grain, winter grain, meaning wheat, spelt, oats, rye, even rapeseed. These crops can really handle a minimum depth of tillage, meaning 10, 12, 15 centimeter maximum with a cultivator. But however, peas, soybeans, or maize might be more sensible to soil porosity, and at least peas, they are quite sensible to soil porosity. So the heavier the soil, the more you will need to at least once in your rotation when cultivating peas. At least once in your rotation for peas, you will need to subsoil a little deeper and to loosen the soil on a deeper profile. For a given machine, also settings or equipment can make the difference. The picture you see is a Horst-Tiger cultivator, which is quite known, but there is quite a difference when you use wide blades, as you see on the left, or very thin blades. They are half the width of the larger one, and you see when you use the thinner one, you still have this loosening of the soil, but you are not mixing so much organic material in the topsoil. So you keep a better cover on the topsoil while disturbing less. So this is what to be aimed at in organic. when we say minimum tillage in organic, usually the question is, okay, but how minimal or how deep, whatever. There are some studies going on, and this is the result of one of these studies, which was performed in the south of Germany, trying to answer this question, how deep? And very briefly, they find out after 11 years of research that a shallow tillage of the stubble and 15 centimeters chisel pass operation before cultivating grain gives, on the long term, it gives the same result as a plowing. So plowing is not always necessary to achieve good yields in organic. Even on the nutrient released nutrition plan. 15 centimeter chisel. Also, from my own experience, this depth of 15 centimeters is just enough to ensure the same level of yields. Additional equipment to fight the weeds. So beside the tillage and beside the direct equipment that we will see afterwards, some additional equipment can be used to decrease the seed stock mainly of the fields. The top one, the first one is not illustrated. This is the farm grain cleaner that you have on almost all farms. These machines that are sieving and winnowing the grain after harvest. If you use it properly, in combination with proper combine setting, you can collect the seeds of the weeds from the field during the harvest, bringing it to the farm, and then separate it with this cleaner. This is usually technology that most of organic farmers are using, for example, in France or in Germany. You just loosen the settings of the combine if you have this grain cleaner at the farm, and allowing the weed seeds to be collected in the bunker and not living on the field. So this means lower wind speed, larger opening of the sieves. Then you bring a kind of dirty crop at the farm, but this is where you separate the weeds and you keep them on the farm instead of living in the fields. Another equipment, the top one, is the seed terminator, which is slowly but surely invading Europe, let's say. What is it? Is it a kind of a mill for weed seeds, which is attached, which can be attached on almost every type of combine? So it's practically destroying the weed seeds at the back of the combine instead of throwing them back in the field. But the drawback is that it takes a lot of power. It's around 80 to 100 horsepower that is taken from the engine. And this is also quite expensive, if not very expensive. But on larger operation, it starts to give some results, not after 1 year, but on the long term, after 2 or 3 years of using these mill. Mainly the grass seeds are dramatically decreasing in the given fields. Another machine is the weed surfer that you see in the middle. This machine collects, you have seen this maybe. This is a machine that collects the head of the weeds which are on top of the crop, and this specially collect the weeds instead of just leaving the seeds, the heads on the ground. This is also a quite expensive machine, but it is sold in Europe for 2 years only, so we don't have much feedback yet. It seems to be quite effective. Here you see it in a seed production, clover seed production. This is in Lithuania, if I'm not wrong. And for these very specific high-value crops, this can be a big advantage. Maybe not in grains yet. The mower chopper also, the chopper which are using to keep the lace and to keep the cover crop clean are also a machine that, if they are well used, they can prevent from multiplying the weeds. And the last one is the swatter. This is already at harvest time, so if you are invaded by weeds, and this can be bring to a quite complicated situation when it comes to harvest. Swattering the whole crop and then combining it can help for the first operation, meaning you will have all these weeds drying, and then it will be easier to collect the whole crop and also collect the weed seeds which are present in the harvest. So now let's speak about weed control. What is first? What is promoting the weeds? What do we have? Why do we see weeds coming up in the crops? And what are the different weed control strategies? So where are these weeds coming from? Mainly from the seed bank, from the soil, which is entertained year after year by weeds that are going to maturation. But also it can be seeds carried by the wind, by the birds, by the sheep, but any other roaming animals, let's say. It can be viable seeds coming from non-composted or not well composted manure, weeds that are transiting through cows and going back to the field. It can be also seeds from contaminated commercial seeds or farm seeds which are not well cleaned. So you are bringing yourself back the weeds in the field. It can be in other application, mulch is applied to the field from the straw, for example, for horticultural crop like strawberries or whatever. You can sometimes bring the weeds through the straw that you are applying, but it can also come from contaminated tillage equipment. This is mainly true for root multiplied weeds, perennial weeds like thistle. We will see it afterwards. So sometimes it can be beneficial to clean a little bit your tillage machine from one field to another if you know that the first field is invaded by perennial weeds, for example. Yeah. What are the favorable conditions for development of weeds? If they have access to light, if the temperature is soil temperature is good enough. It's also depending of the season. Not only the soil temperature, but the day length, nutrient availability. Some weeds are only popping up when, for example, enough nitrogen is in the field, is present. Also water availability. Every plant needs water, but some are really appearing when, for example, a lot of water is flushing on the field. This can be the case of specific weeds which appear under irrigation condition. Regarding the season, maybe you have experienced that sometimes if you plant double crop sunflower or very late sunflower, like around the 20th of June, these late season sunflower can be much cleaner than the early season. This is because some weeds, mainly the grass weeds, are driven, the germination is driven by the day length, and from the 21st of June, their germination are dramatically decreasing. So usually late season sunflower or late season crops, let's say, or double season crops or double crops, let's say, they might be cleaner than the first one. Also because nature is made that way. I mean, is going another way than nature to plant very, very late, and nature is not used with that. There are also agricultural practices that can promote the weeds. That's first of all, when you don't manage the fallow field, the stubble, and you leave the weeds coming up and producing some seeds. Irrigation, massive irrigation, so sprinkler irrigation, maybe, but also disc harrow or cultivator can sometimes multiply the perennial weeds, like you see on this picture on the right. This is a thistle. After one pass of disc harrow, from one thistle, then we obtain two. We obtain a second one. So we are multiplying in some case the weeds. Sometimes weeds can also come from the surroundings or the surrounding of the field. So not managing the area directly surrounding the fields can also lead to invasion. Excessive plowing So by plowing every year, actually, we are preserving all these seeds for the second year. Instead of keeping this seed stock on the top layer and trying to deplete it by successional operation or by natural factor, we are actually, by plowing, we are putting these seeds in the fridge, and the year after we will bring them back with maybe 80 or 90% germination, and they will do the job as as they were not how do you say, disturbed during this time. So very first advice, and which seems which is very obvious, but sometimes not always applied, is to the very first parameter to have a clean crop is to plant on a clean field. So the very last operation of tillage before seeding really have to ensure that the field is 100% clean, because afterward it will be much more complicated to control these weeds. And then to obtain that, and in combination with that, the fall seedbed technique is something I guess is already broadly used in Ukraine in arable crops. But in a few words, I would like to remain what are the basics of this technique. This is actually, it's about growing the weeds and then growing the crops. So the technique is to prepare very early a final seedbed, meaning having a fine soil and having a flat soil already. And with the help of temperature and moisture, we will wait for the first flush of weeds to grow up. And then quite quickly, 12, 15 days after the establishment of the seedbeds, a first operation will destroy completely this first flush of weeds before planting the crop. This destruction can be done with a striggle arrow or rotary striggle or flat sweep cultivator. The more shallow, the better. That's really the critical point of this technique, is to have from the first operation a very flat field, and to be able to operate very, very shallow, because it's easy to understand that if you go a little bit too deep when you go to destroy the weeds, you will bring on the topsoil, will bring at the surface some new seeds that will germinate then in the crop. So the idea is to destroy these weeds present in the 0.5 centimeter layer, and not to go deeper when it comes to destroy them, in order not to bring new seeds on the top. So it usually of course needs some temperature and moisture, but yeah, don't wait too much to operate the second pass, because we will see it later. The more efficient pass is usually not the most visible. You will destroy some white wire, some very small weeds, or just germinated. This is enough for them to be destroyed. So don't wait to have a green field to go to operate your second pass. Little word regarding the perennial. What is the best strategy to destroy perennial weeds? This is mainly thistle here in the picture, and I think it's maybe one of the main issue you can have in your arable crops. What you have to say is that their nutrient stock has its lowest level in the spring. So this is when we really have to destroy them, and this is the easiest period for them to be. I mean, this is the weakest period for them. So the idea is to scalp. Is to go from 5 to, let's say, 15 centimeter in 3 passes progressively, to slowly but surely deplete the stock, which is the nutrient reserve, which is located in the roots. So first destruction as soon as possible in the spring. After 10, 12 days, this is usually 8 centimeter, 8 leaves stage. A second pass. Why 8 leaves? Because it's more or less the moment when they switch to pumping nutrients from the roots from the roots to recharging the roots with nutrients. So up to 8 leaves, more or less, they are still pumping nutrients in the roots. So it helps us depleting the nutrients. Afterwards, they start recharging the roots. So 8 leaves is the optimum for destruction. A third one, and then you are almost sure that 80-90% of these rhizomes are depleted and dead. But you have lost around 1 month regarding the optimal timing for seeding, and the best way to let's say to finalize this operation is to plant a late season but very quickly covering crop like buckwheat. I think buckwheat is a quite good crop in some region of Ukraine with a quite good market. So when you have problems of thistle in some field, schedule work like that with triple cultivation with decreasing depth, and then buckwheat crop. That's one of the most, if not the most efficient way. Plowing in the autumn is just gives a visual effect, but the nutrients are already in the roots, and then you will see the same circle, the same plots of thistle in the spring just popping up. It doesn't really help. Just to have a cleaner field for winter, but in the spring the situation is the same. What are the different mechanical weeding strategies when it comes to mechanical weeding of the crops? I identify 3 main strategies in a grain crop, let's say, not in a row crop like sunflower or maize, but for grain crop. You have 3 main strategies. The first one is, and maybe the most common in the Great Plains of Ukraine, is the dense sowing. So seeding as thick and as dense as possible between the rows, with intervention with strigel, weeder or strigel, or rotary hoe. So it's mainly based on covering, and then some helps with the weeder and the rotary hoe. There is another, this is the first picture you see here. Another strategy would be wide sowing. This is the second crop. Wide sowing, in this case, this is 25 centimeters in between the rows. And then the use of rotary hoe and camera precision hoe to clean in between the rows. This is more efficient. This is more efficient on bigger weeds, but the equipment is more expensive. This is a little slower. But another drawback is that with this kind of hoe, you still have a tolerance distance close to the row of maybe 2 or 3 centimeters, and this distance is never cleaned. This is why there is a third strategy, which is the broadband sowing and hoeing. I will present it here briefly. So it's a little bit like the second strategy, but instead of sowing a single row, you will seed a broad band of cereal, like maybe 10 centimeters wide and around 20-22 centimeters in between these bands. Then when you come with this hoe, with camera hoe to clean in between the row, the tolerance is 0. So we don't have this 2 centimeter tolerance close to the row. It's full 0. So this means this weed, this plant, and this plant, they will disappear. But it's not a problem because we have way enough density. And this high density in the band will prevent from weeds to pop up thanks to competition with the crop roots and competition for light. So zero tolerance hoeing. This specific machine, which is built by a Swedish company, also allowed to seed something when hoeing. So it's a kind of hoe and seeder. You might have seen it already. It's a chameleon seeder from Sweden. And when hoeing, you can already seed something actually, and properly seeding, not just spreading some seeds. that actually put the seeds in the ground. It can allow, for example, to seed some clover or alfalfa under a growing cereal, or even soybean or whatever. So it's a very versatile machine. Really opens a lot of possibilities. And when you look at the results, this is a picture from 2 weeks ago in Sweden. You have also so you have this high plant density in the row, but when you look at coverage, canopy cover, it's almost 50% of the surface is already covered. So it's at least as covering as the classic technology. Another strategy might be, depending on the disease pressure and pest pressure you have in your region in Ukraine, but sowing 2 to 3 weeks earlier instead of seeding later. Sometimes some organic farmers, they like to seed later to avoid the flush of weeds and to clean the weeds before seeding. But when you seed very early, you have a very quick development of the cereals in early autumn, meaning you can reach the tree leaf stage at 3 weeks, and tree leaf stage, for who knows, in cereal is usually the triggering time for the first weeding. This can allow farmers to already control the weeds in autumn several times, and having a very covering crop during winter and in the spring, with a much more stronger root system developed in the spring, which can help to have a faster start and to have a faster and a better reaching of nutrients in the soil in the spring, when you really need the crop to be strong and at catching nutrients. So if pest and disease situation allows, seeding earlier can allow to clean, to control the weeds a little bit more intensively in the autumn. And in some case, you don't have to clean anymore in the spring, because the crop is already covering, and it's starting faster also, thanks to more vegetation and thanks to more roots. Now let's see the last chapter of this presentation regarding the effectively mechanical weed control equipment. What are the equipment and how to use them? So what are the success factors of a weeding operation? First of all, the weather. So that's nice to observe that bad weather for conventional weeding and conventional spraying, let's say, meaning dry and windy weather, is by opposition the best weather for mechanical cleaning. So to make sure that your operation will be successful, having windy and sunny day is always better. It's not always possible, but that's the better way to work. Try to reach a fine tilth, a fine soil from the seeding, from the beginning, using the roller, Cambridge type roller at seeding can help, because having a very fine soil, you will trigger all the weeds to germinate from the beginning. In every cloth of soil, you have some weeds. So if you are breaking this cloth at every operation, or if the rain is breaking the bigger cloth in time, once the crop is already growing, it will release some new seed weeds on the soil, and it will trigger some new germination. So having a very fine soil from the, let's say, quite fine soil from the beginning, will trigger germination of almost all weeds, and in the first passes you will be able to destroy almost everything growing in the topsoil. So having a fine silt really help. Also, having a very flat soil really help to better adjust your equipment and your weeding equipment. And when it comes to adjustment, the simple rule for me was to seed 10% more of your let's say actual seeding rate or conventional seeding rate 10% because I used to say that you might have up to 5 weeding operation in the crop. This is the maximum. And I believe that, I mean, I count that for each operation, you lose 2% of your population, of your plant population. If you are not using 2%, if you are not destroying any plant, any plant of your crop, I mean, any cultivated plant for during one pass, this means that you are not strong enough. You are not going strong enough. And my advice to set the weeding equipment is to start quite strong. So put pressure on the tines, or put pressure on your rotary hoe or whatever, but go strong and release it if necessary. Because usually we used to set the machine too softly, and then we keep it like that instead of going too strong and releasing if needed. That's the way usually it works. It works the best. And don't forget, you have to destroy some cultivated plant. You have to destroy some of your crop to make sure that you are doing a good job. If you are not destroying, you are not going strong enough. The machines, and in little detail, but I mean, the most common, you know them already. The Strigel, it's you can set the angle and the speed mainly. This is used. This can be used in the crop from 2 to 6 leaves, also in blind weeding, also in fall seedbed preparation. The only drawback is that it doesn't really work in minimum tillage situation, meaning with much residues on the soil. The rotary hoe is much more adapted to minimum tillage situation. It have to be operate quite fast, 15 to 20 kilometers. That's also why having a flat field can also help. Finally, to drive the tractor on the quite high speeds. The rotary Strigel, which is a little newer on the market. It exists maybe for 5-6 years. I found this machine quite impressive. Not for the very first usage it was aimed at, meaning weeding in crops, because mainly the broadleaf crop like soybean, sunflower, they are very sensible to that. And it's almost impossible to do a proper job on these crops without destroying everything. But on developed cereals, it works very well. It's quite aggressive. On minimum tillage, or even on no tillage, if some farmers are aiming to grow organic no tillage crop, this machine is really able to go through very hard soil and being quite efficient, and also to residues, to biomass residues on the soil. It works really well, and it's also a great machine to prepare fall seedbed, or to operate blind weeding just after planting. If you can control your planting depth and to operate just over the planting depth, that it works much better than a Strigel, for example, because you can control the depth of this machine quite in a quite accurate manner. Another machine is the gas burner. This is a little less encountered, mainly used in horticultural farming, vegetable farming. So it burns the very small weeds without touching the soil. That's the advantage. So you are not triggering new germination, but it's quite costly. You can use in average 50 kilograms per hectare of gas. The hoe, cultivator hoe, is well known. Just a small observation on this machine. Farmers, sometimes they like to operate it quite deep. The advice is to really keep the working machine, the working parts on the very top soil, just enough to destroy the weeds, because exactly like for the fall seedbeds, the deeper you go, the more you will bring weeds on the top and then trigger a new germination. You will also damage the roots. The deeper you go, the more you damage the roots, and the more you lose moisture also in critical situation. So try to keep your the setting of the hoe as shallow as possible, just enough to destroy the living weeds. Attached to this hoe, you have also a specific guidance system. This is camera system. These camera systems are more and more common, and they are very accurate machine. If you want to go into more intensive weed control, it's also able to operate day and night without any difference. Sometimes it goes even better by night because the light of the spotlights is constant, not like the sun. But that's a machine which is, I mean, that's an option which is really, really impressive, even in grain crops. Robots are coming, but robots are very expensive. But for some use, for high value crops like vegetable, like leaf crops, like lettuce, for example, when you don't have much labor available, these machines are slowly but surely coming in Europe, also mostly in the West, where we don't have any more labor force to manually clean the organic leaf vegetables. That was all from my side. A few take-home message. Weeding a crop is never too early, but it's often too late. When you think you are not doing anything, that's sometimes where you are the most effective. And the most effective operation are often the least spectacular. When you are destroying these white wires, these white threads in the soil, you don't really see them, but that's when you are the more effective by controlling them. Consider also broader strategies than only direct control. When it comes to weed control, just don't think only about striggle or rotary hoe or cultivator. It's broader than that. It's the rotation. It's maybe the multi-annual lay that can be used to reset the situation. It's sometimes using less the plow, but only when necessary. So it's not only about direct control. And yeah, that was the last one. Plowing works well when you don't use it or when you use it less. Thank you for following this webinar. This presentation was held in the frame of the QFPT project sustained by Swiss Confederation and Sarfoso. I will leave you now with my colleague from Ukraine on the second part of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Дякую, Нікола. Дуже цікава доповідь.
Thank you, Nicolas. This report and presentation was extremely interesting, and it's very useful for a lot of our farmers. But I have a question, if I may. You were talking about the early planting, early seeding. Do you mean the winter crops or spring crops? Because we did not understand when you suggest that we are so early, which particular varieties and which particular...
Sorry, I didn't present. This is for winter crops, so mainly for wheat and other cereals. In spring, this is the opposite. I didn't mention that, but in spring we usually plant later than conventional farmers because we need warmer soil. We need to apply this fall seedbed technique, and the warmer the soil, the quicker the start of the crop, and then the quicker the coverage. So earlier in autumn, but later in spring.
Дякую, дякую. Якщо є в когось запитання...
Thank you, Nicolas. If anybody has questions, please go ahead. So that we do not keep Nicolas too long. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. We had some questions already. I liked the phrase that, and there is so much sense in it, that the best plowing is is lack of plowing, and it's exactly the great description of the situation. Well, and maybe we will be able to ask questions afterwards, but if you do not have the questions which have just come up after the presentation, so why don't we continue? Let us give the floor to Mykola Bykov. He is a consultant on organic farming and the tillage of soil in the organic farming. Unmute your mic, Mr. Mykola. Well, I am going to continue the presentation, which was given to Nicolas. He was giving us very specific advice, and a lot of specific issues were discussed by him. So I would like to ask a question. What are the first tasks in terms of tillage of the soil? What are the, well, we were talking about the management of weeds, but there is a very important task, and the first task is to change the structural state of the physical properties of the soil. We are talking about the plowing as a negative phenomena, but we actually have to work on the Ukrainian soils, and there are more than 19 million hectares which are too hard, and we have to make them not as hard. And definitely the farmers grow various crops, and they are working properly, and they give an opportunity to make the soil not as hard. But we have to provide a sufficient amount of oxygen so that the root systems will be developing. And the second task is mechanical destruction of weeds. Well, what we are going to discuss now, our main task is to stimulate the germination of the weeds, and then to decrease their efficiency and to destroy them. And the third task is to destroy the pests and various illnesses. Well, we have to eradicate pests and diseases, and we have to decrease the pathogens buried into the soil, and it dies in unfavorable conditions. If the organic farming is being carried out for a long period of time, the residues are decaying quite quickly, and it gives us an opportunity to destroy the pathogens. But we are always saying that we have to use mechanical treatment of the soil, and also biological preparations are to be applied. And the sooner the residues decay, the better yields are going to be, and they will become the nutrients for the next feed. We also have to remember not only about one way of tillage, but of the system of tillage. And the farmers who are working on organic agriculture always are telling about the systems which they have. In a lot of cases, within several years, they develop their own system of tillage, which is based on certain operations. And if we look at them in the period of 5 to 7 years, we can see that 70% of tillage is being repeated for several certain crops, and each farmer has his or her own scientific unique system. But we have the main different types of work in terms of time: autumn cultivation, pre-sowing, pre-emergence soil cultivation, post-emergence soil. It depends on the various conditions, on the crops we are growing, and we are going to talk about the systems. The types of soil cultivation: the autumn tillage is the main soil cultivation in the summer and autumn period for sowing or planting crops in the following year. Well, first of all, we have to make the seeds of the weeds to germinate, and we can use various equipment to to till the land. But this will help us to prepare the crops for the next sowing. And pre-sowing soil cultivation is carried out before sowing or planting agricultural crops. It helps to preserve moisture in the soil, creates favorable conditions for uniform seed embedding to the required depths and germination at further plant growing. It depends on your possibilities and opportunities, but you have to understand how each operation actually impacts the soil, how to prepare the soil to be able to sow the main crop. And there are several practices of cultivation. Some people use their own practices and own machinery, and it has to be positive. And the pre-emergent soil cultivation is carried out after sowing or planting trees. And our task is to destroy the weeds, loosen the soil, and create the favorable conditions for seed to germinate and plant the development. We have to create the conditions under which the crop is going to germinate as soon as possible with the absence of the weeds. And this is a very important phase which helps us to increase the yields. And also, well, there is such a notion as hoeing. When we are hoeing without seeing the seedlings, and well, everything should depend on the equipment which is being tuned to the procedure. And everybody has seen this classical ways of tilling the land. And you can see here that well, the intensive evaporation is taking place. And well, there was a practice and which was trying to bring this humidity to the top layers of the soil. The agronomists consider that it's a negative approach, but nevertheless, you have to know that these operations exist. If our top soil is not as hard, so it creates sort of a cushion and the humidity is not evaporated. But if the soil is hard and it's not loose, it does not allow it does not allow us to bring the humidity to the root system. So we have to remember that various tillage gives different results. Those farmers who created their own system, they balance the tillage and they create their non-classical conditions of tillage. And here again, you can see that, well, actually some practices are not recommended. Early spring, we have to actually keep the humidity to destroy the capillaries and to keep the humidity. We have to understand that the loss of humidity is a very important factor. And you can see that the conditions could be really hard in the autumn, like for example, this autumn, and there is a problem in conservation of the humidity. And why do we need the tillage to be a very high quality one? We have to understand how it actually affects the soil. And if we do not do it properly, so the humidity is not going to be kept on all the horizon. We have to level the fields. And also when the top level is too hard, and the soil is rolled, so the rains are not absorbed. The water is not absorbed by the soil because it's too hard. And each operation and each system has to be multi-layered. And then we will be able to create ideal conditions for preserving the humidity so that the plants will be ideally germinating. And we not always can do it ideally, but the experienced farmers usually preserve the humidity properly, and their fields are by 90% properly prepared. It also is related to certain factors which develop these technologies. And here you can see the table, and this is an American table, and it shows how each tillage affects each operation. And it is quite understandable that different machinery is being used, and it can have different effects on the soil, and not all of them can make the soil harder. So
Тут є декілька знарядів, які в Україні мало відомі. Це вібраційне борона. Можна знайти в інтернеті. Це більше використовується знаряддя для овочевих культур. Воно перебиває верхній горизонт. Дуже похоже до фрези, але горизонтальне. І маятникові борони, вона також мало відома в Україні. Також
and this also is not very well known in Ukraine, but it is usually used for the vegetables. So you can see several tables which show how how each equipment is affecting the soil, and the depths in the majority of cases can deepen, and we have to understand when we are going to use it. And 10 centimeters of the
or that
soil
type
not
of
be
operation
plowed.
which
and each tillage
we can
actually affects
expect in our farming. And then we have the following indicators, how we can work with seeds for perennials in particular. This material is for training is developed for training purposes. It's always dependent on the context. Let's take a look at different types of cultivation, so that every kind of farmer would find something useful for them. We can have different types of rolling and other types of operations with shallow upper layer. We mix the plant residues with the soil, and also we mix the fallen crops with weed seedlings. It could be done with different types of cultivators depending on what we want to achieve. There is one rule: we must not foster or facilitate further improvement of conditions for the weeds. In most cases, we use different kinds of hoeing equipment. In Ukrainian farming, we don't see, unfortunately, good practices. Most of farmers wait until soil is quite warm and the weeds start growing, but we often miss the high time for removing the emerging weeds. Now I indicate the best time frame for the operations for cultivation. It's usually 10 days after emergence of weeds. So pre-emergence cultivation enables us to solve a lot of problems in organic farming. Earlier, it was so much more difficult to tackle the issues at stake in the Soviet times because of the lack of equipment, whereas now we can have these wonderful machines that go as shallow as up to 2 centimeters. Some people use this equipment immediately, others use it later, and it always depends on your context and preferences. Excuse me, I'm going to launch my presentation once again because it somehow fails on my computer. Sorry about that. Some kind of error. So we have pre-emergence and post-emergence harrowing, also blind harrowing. When we have the sprouts, there are several factors already. First, the plants have to be rooted. Your first pass, you keep an eye whether you uproot your crop. It could be soybeans or wheat. We really need to be careful not to uproot our sprouts of crops. Your equipment has to be very reliable. The diameter of the wire on this equipment, on this harrow, has to be 6 to 8 millimeters. But with inter-row hoeing, you can start quite early. Nicolas was talking a bit about setups, and I'm focusing more on safety. When we can use strigil harrow on soybeans. Soybeans are quite sensitive at the very beginning of its vegetating. So you have to watch out and see how it's germinating and merging. Even if you see some weeds in your young soybeans, among your soybeans, you might want to wait until your crop is well established before you start weeding. In general, it's possible to use on every plant development stage this rotary harrow. Some farmers use two passes. First, when it's emerged and well rooted, they use rotary harrows, and after that, a strigil machine later. With mulching, let me say that sometimes we spread the mulch unevenly. That's a bad practice. We have to use proper machinery for mulching or other devices or tools that would enable us to make our mulch as small as possible and spread it evenly. Let's take a closer look at different machines. You have to be really aware of the functions that they have to be used for. So there could be some mulching machinery. This could be also chopping roller. I can see that these are used on fallen crops of sunflower. So chopping rollers chop the leftovers, and I'm not sure how this could be used because I haven't used it myself. Maybe some of you have some experience and can share. The other category of machinery is can be used for deeper operations like plow or ripper, deep ripper, and also stubble cultivator grubber that can be adjusted depending on the depth we need to work on. This has both direct and indirect impact on our soil. And also the the direct weeding equipment. Flex harrow, first of all, is mostly used early in spring before seeding. It's very effective in weed control. The rotary harrow is another example. Mostly it's used to loosen the upper layer of soil. We had this study that a rotary harrow can destroy up to 60% of weeds in soil. Cereal crops sometimes are quite resilient to rotary harrow operations. Hoe or striggle harrow can be used as well. The striggle machinery can be used pre-sowing and post-sowing, depending on which goal you want to achieve. There can be different setups, and so you can find different suppliers and vendors of these types of machinery. Inter-row cultivators are also available from different vendors. They can be used for any crops. Even 7 years ago, it was almost impossible to find them. That's not the case anymore. So you first define your goals, and then you select proper machinery. That's the right way to do things. We keep seeing new types and categories of machines for organic farming. So it's best to choose just to select the machinery depending on what you need to achieve. That's it from me. Thank you for your attention. And I hope you could share your experiences as well. I stop sharing my screen. Vitaly, over to you. Thank you so much. That's the first time that I see you being so brief. Yeah, that's right. That's because I want the colleagues to share their experiences with us. I'm sure we are going to gain a lot of advantage from that. For sure. Oleksii Yazykov, owner of Żywa Niva farm. Oleksii, please unmute yourself and switch on your camera. Oh, we can see Oleksii is in the field. Vitaly, I cannot see him. I can see he switched on the video. We can see the sky in the background, but there is some lagging. Unfortunately, it was inaudible. We can see you. We can see you are moving. Is it better now? A bit better. I'm moving. I'm trying to find a better spot. The topic of our discussion. What's the topic? Weed control with mechanic approaches. What approach do you use? No-till? Yes. Okay. If I may, I will try quickly to make a brief presentation. First of all, what I can see on this topic is crop rotation. Let me be brief. Crop rotation accounts for 30% of weed control, based on my experience. And then, next point, green manure is another point. Here we could speak a lot about this. What kind of issues do we have here? First, if we have green manure crop, we don't have no time for weeding. But if we don't have green manure crops in place, that puts us in a situation with other challenges. If I have, I had experience when I had rape seeds before soybeans. Why was it by accident? Because we could not get rid of rape seeds. The weather was very favorable for this crop. I hope you can hear me better now. Please tell me if you can see and hear me. Yes, we can. Okay, great. So the rapeseed was 150 centimeters tall, and we had no equipment to mulch it effectively so that our cultivating machines could go there after that. So except for rotary harrow, we didn't have anything else. We failed with our soybeans as well because the this rapeseed leftovers were really big. About 40% of the seeds of soybeans were on the surface, but those which got in deeper in the soil, but the yield out of those was very good. So thanks to this mulch, we achieved almost no weeds.
Мікрофон,
Так,
мікрофон.
да, Олексій, мікрофон.
Your
случайно.
mic. Your mic. And also thanks to the lot of nutrients, we had wonderful beans as a result of those that got into the soil. That's number one, experience number one. Number two, we keep growing rye, and then we mulch it. It gives us a chance to effectively control diseases, and also it gives some nutrients for soybeans. But then again, when in spring you want to cultivate this rye together with its root systems, our cultivators got a lot of plant residues, and then they get stuck. In the mid-May, we can stop these operations, and it leaves us with too little time to sow soybeans. We do have enough nutrients, but also we have enough weeds in the field. What machinery do we use? We have a minimum tilling approach. Our cultivation depth is up to 5-6 centimeters. That's tops. With this kind of technique, we had the study this year. We discovered that compaction of the soil is still there, up to 30 centimeters deep. What kind of explanation can be found for this phenomenon? I don't know. So this year we decided to loosen our soil. We also have this another technique for weed control. We are growing organic soybeans and some other crops using no-till technique. We first sow rye, and then when it starts flowering, we sow soybeans. We had some good precipitations in June and July this year when the soybeans were already growing. But when there is not enough rain, we didn't have soybeans in sufficient quantities. We don't have enough moisture for 2 crops. My colleagues in Odessa region face the same situation. They don't use green manure. They don't sow it. because winter crops of green manure take up and use up all the moisture from the ground, from the soil, which makes it not favorable for the spring crops. And given the above, we probably need to have some longer research, longer studies, up to 5 years. In my fields, we have good results with winter crops of green manure after wheat. We use some legumes, and we had buckwheat and so on.
And next year we were planting the maize, and the difference was 6 and 8 with the cover crops. And the topic of the cover crops is working, and actually it is yielding very efficient results. What else? What else should I tell you? Well, if you have any questions, so please ask the questions. For how many years you have not been plowing, and for how many years you are working in the organic farmer? Even prior to the organic farming, I was not using the plowing. I have been working in the organic farmer for 12 years, and for 20 years, I have not been plowing at all, because we use now tillage technology for 8 years. So you are going to hoe certain fields, yeah, do you? And 30-35 centimeters of pressing. The Scott company actually worked on 2 fields, and they were trying to work on various soils, and on various soils we established that this depth is to be compacted. I do have some explanations. It's not scientifically grounded, but it's logical. And I understand that in the layer of 30 centimeters, the roots are developing at a maximum speed. And if it dies, and then we till the soil at the depths of 5-6 centimeters, actually close the pores, and together with the humidity, they travel down these channels, and they reach the layer where the roots are not developed that well. And most probably this is the explanation. And this is the only way I can explain it, because we have never been working on such a depth. I don't know, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but this is my observation and my explanation. Thank you. If you have any questions, please. Maybe Nicolas has the questions to a practitioner who is working at a large area, and he implements and he works in the area of organic farming in a large area.
Так, а можна задати запитання?
Can I ask the question? Can Ukrainians ask questions? Yes, please. Please do. I'm Yuri Mishenko. I work in the National Agrarian University, and we are working on cover crops. Mykola, and did you use the cultivator or the disc to bury the residues? Well, this is the question to Mykola Bykov. Mykola Bykov. Are you asking me? Yeah, Oleksii. Well, I had a disc hoe, and if I'm talking about the rapeseed, but if I'm talking about the rye, we use the cultivator. Yeah, tell us about the rye. We have 2 cultivators. It's Alcor sowing machine and the cultivator, and also we have a Lemke crystal and also Korunda. If the rye has not grown too deep, so we were able to bury it. And we also have developed our our own machine, and it works quite good. The idea was to cut the roots at the depths of 3 or 4 centimeters and not to destroy the soil. But under our conditions at that time, the soil was too humid, and nevertheless, the roots continued to grow. And the idea was sort of cool. Maybe in Odessa area, it will be working. We also are working on the rye. I can help you a little bit. The disc hose. We are using the disc cultivators only. And to avoid the problem with the lack of humidity, you have to do it earlier because the rye uses too much humidity from the soil. Usually on the 1st of May, the rye has very small mass, but we would like to get more nutrients. That's why we are waiting until the 10th, the 15th of May to be able to grow it more. And then, yeah, this cultivators, yeah, that's good, that's great, but it's 7 centimeters plus. We were using rye for the potatoes, and for 1 month we didn't have any weeds, and the mulch did not give the opportunity for the weeds to grow. And so the canola also doesn't feel that, but other crops feel that. I was trying it with wheat and the legumes and the sunflowers, and I'm also planting the pumpkins and all the, we usually have to give them just like 10 days between the destruction of the rye and sowing. And where your farm is, it's Zhytomyr Oblast. We are from Sumy, so you have a better situation with the rains. Yeah. Okay. This year, there was not that much precipitations, and actually at a distance of 100 kilometers, the difference in rainfall is drastic. Actually, in some places it rains without and in some areas in the same latitude there is lack of rain. Thank you for your answer. I would like to remind you that in Sumy Oblast the hemp has been growing very well. Well, you have to work on the technical hemp, yeah. And yeah, but we have to grow food. We have to grow wheat and potatoes and buckwheat. Thank you, Oleksii, for joining us and shared your experience. And thank you for being invited. And I hope maybe my presentation was useful to some people. And Oleksii, can you stay with us? Sergii Kozin also would like to tell us about his own experience. Yeah, I'm going to listen to you. Yeah, I'm going to listen. Thank you. And next, we are going to listen to the practitioner, the chief agronomist of the organic farm, Sergii Kozin. They have 7,000 hectares of organic fields, and they are actually growing various crops, and they use the crop rotation, and he has been a practitioner for many years. Sergei, are you with us? Yes, yes, I'm here. Good afternoon. And it's a very interesting seminar on management of weeds. We have discussed the various ways of managing the weeds, including provocations and whatever we can do with them under our conditions and with our capacities. And in general, I would like to tell you about our practice of working with the weeds. Maybe I will give you an example of one of the crops, let's say, from the point of preparing the soil, sowing, and then until harvesting. So maybe it would be interesting to talk about the soybeans, canola, or the sunflowers. Yeah, sunflower. Let's talk about the sunflower. In general, if we look at the crop rotation we are using, and we have the farm which is called agroecology, we are working for 40 years in organic farming sector, and I have been participating in this work of this farm for 8 years, and we have quite sustainable approach and we to the crop rotation, which is well established in our farm. And the time changes, and actually we are not being dogmatic. We actually from practice establish the sequence of various crops. Usually the sunflower is after wheat or spelta. And before that, we have perennial grasses. We have a husbandry farm, and we are growing alfalfa and aspartate, and the predecessor of the sunflower is wheat or spelta. And the oats are possible as well. And as far as the preparation of the soil is concerned, we actually clean the field from the weed and also clean from the residues. And actually the residues of the winter crops is a big problem. But from practice, we know that the real crops will not winter well, but the residues might winter well, and it will use the humid soil in spring after the winter. And we do not have time to destroy it, and that is going to use our nutrients and humidity. So we are trying to clean the field. And this year, well, at present, after we have harvested wheat, we are tilling the land for the second time, even the third time. We have harvested the wheat and then tilled the land for 5 centimeters to provoke, and then we cultivated the field. And now, 3 days ago, or 2 weeks ago, we had 20 meters of rainfall, and we again see the residues of plants in the streets, in the fields, and we can find anything there. And at present, we started to use the disc hose, and we would like to mix the straw in winter, and it is working with the bacteria already, and whatever was on the top of the soil, it has been wetted by the rain, and the bacteria started to work there. Not to wait for that, we sent the disc hose, and the depth was 6 to 8 centimeters. I cannot say that, well, it was exactly 6 centimeters, but maybe sometimes 6, 8 centimeters. And we are cutting and we are mixing, and the disc hoe has never been, and it is not going to be the machine which destroys the weeds. It can give us a very nice picture, the black field, everything looks beautiful, but it is not very effective. It will mix, it was cut, but actually a lot of weeds will survive this procedure. And especially those weeds with a good root system, they will survive, and later they will start, they will grow from the roots which we have not destroyed. We will provoke their growth. But our task at present is to mix a little bit the straw and to bury the green plants which have grown, just of the plants of the spelta or wheat or weeds, and to start the biotica working. This is not the last tillage. We are going to cultivate before winter, but we will decide what to do when we see the state of the field before winter. But now the task for us is to clean the field for the sunflower so that it is clean of green plants. And thus, we are going to leave this field for the winter, and only early spring, we will be able to enter the field. And when the soil will be prepared physically, when it is going to be dry enough, it will be the end of March, we hope. And we will start working, till it with the cultivators. And this will be the conventional cultivators with the rollers behind them. And the task is to keep the humidity, to close the humidity. Mykola showed us the pictures today where we saw the various state of soil, like rolled ones. And these are ideal pictures. I was trying to make as photographs, but it was impossible to do. But here I understood everything from these photos as the capillaries are concerned and everything. So we are going to enter the soil with the depths of 3 centimeters, but it will be 3 to 5 centimeters. And respectively, well, we might go deeper or more shallow, but we are going to cut the weeds which have wintered, and we also will keep the humidity. And then the first sun rays and sunlights are going to provoke the weeds. At 1 square centimeter, there are 10, 15 seeds of the weeds. And if we provoke them at the depths of 3 centimeters, this will be a good advantage for the next year. After such a tillage in March, it will be still cold, that the temperature will be sufficient for the weeds to grow into the phase of white thread with no roots yet, but micro roots exist already, and we can see them during this period. And then we send the cultivator and we provoke all this. And the main task is to keep the humidity. And we will actually, our capillaries will be covered with the soil at the depths of 3-5 centimeters. And thus we will preserve the humidity. And then we are going to use and send this spring hoe striggle. And ideally, it would be striggle, it should be striggle. And we have a striggle and for 2-4 centimeters, but it won't be able to do all the work we need. So our cultivators usually till the area, and then in these operations, we use the old hoe, ZBR. Maybe it's not as good as the modern machinery, but its task is very, very simple. They have to work at a high speed and to destroy the white threads and to kill them. And so we will actually also chase away the bacteria which started to work with those white threads. So thus we send ZBRs and Striggles and Irostars, which was mentioned today, and we've seen the picture, and everything which can carry out this operation could be used just so that it will be working not deeper than 3 to 5 centimeters, because these 3-5 centimeters have to be actually preserved until we sow the sunflower, and we are going to do it from the 1st to the 15th of May. So we can work on these at the depths of 3 to 5 centimeters, but we should not go deeper. With each centimeter, we will destroy the field. And we usually hoe before the sowing of the sunflowers several times, and we are going to destroy the white threads. And usually we see them under the top level of the soil. And as soon as we see them in the evening, we already send the machine there. And next day, when at least one green flower will germinate from this white thread, it will mean that only 80% of our work is going to be lost. And we cannot tie all our hopes with the spring hoe. And well, actually, we will see that our work was done in vain, and it will be necessary to again start working with the cultivators, and they will bring us 1 centimeter deeper to the humid layer of soil. And in this case, well, depending on the year, depending on the level of the humidity and the temperature, usually we hoe from 2 to 4 times until we sow the sunflower. And we actually take into account the temperature of the soil.
Apart from our microphone, your mic is muted. I'm sorry, excuse me. It was an incoming call, so it was automatically done. The longer our mic, your mic again. Can you hear me now? So it turns out we are waiting until our soil is warm enough on the depth of up to 8 centimeters. And we start sowing. So we cultivate as deep as our moisture is. We used to work 5 centimeters deep, but the moisture actually can be deeper, 6 to 8 centimeters. It depends on the weather in spring. With pre-sowing cultivation, we would use the same machinery, with this part, preparing the seed bed. It should be a little bit harder than our loosened, warm upper layer of soil. Why? Why harder? Because it has to stimulate the plant to root better. If we sow into this very loosened soil, it's not going to be stimulated. It would develop good roots later, but we can see from the experience that it's not as good as when we sow into harder soil. I'm not talking about very hard soil, of course not. That's of course a relative parameter. Your mic. The sowing machine, when we set it up, after we purchased it at the beginning, we never changed the setting. We usually do it at a 7 centimeter depth. We also do 6 centimeter deep sowing for further blind harrowing. When we first tried it, we used it with a trigger, with others as well, but the trigger is much better. The other types of machinery have quite hard springs, and it's not as good. We normally do blind harrowing on the 3rd day, not later than that, because 7 days later, our sunflowers would be almost at the top of the soil. So we normally do it on the 3rd or 4th day. Not the 1st, not the 2nd, but normally 3rd. Your mic. So our square centimeters of soil have this number of seeds. Your mic keeps muting. That's because I have dozens of incoming calls, the end of the working day, you know. You have to speed it up then. So normally we do it on the 3rd or 4th days with spring, with this blind harrowing. When we did it for the first time, it looked useless. It was so dusty, you could hardly see. But then when we saw the first weeds, we could find out the advantages of this approach. We could see where the work was not done and where it has actually been done. We saved ourselves a lot of pain with this blind harrowing, because otherwise we would have had quite a lot of weeds. With pre-emergence harrowing, we wait for emergence of the first. After this harrowing, we wait until there is this distinct row of sunflower. Then we do the weeding, and we have to ensure as a small protection area as possible. Rape seeds have also good roots. When it has 5 leaves, it is quite good. Whereas with sunflowers, you can come as close as possible to the plant. And we do the inter-row cultivation. It's very, very slow, like 3 kilometers per hour. You can walk around the field while he would do only 1 pass. That's going to be our first pass of weeding. This year, we've seen an interesting thing. When we had this pre-emergence harrowing, we had to do the weeding. And then we see some rain, some precipitation, up to 15 millimeters. And then again, we start preparing for weeding. We see this very, very fine crust. You know, when you stick, you dig into the ground with a spade, and then you take it out, you see the small crust on top. And we see some white threads. At that point, our sunflower was about 5 centimeters tall. Those were the weeds. So we tried a new type of rotation hoe. Oleksii Yazykov has very good experience with this equipment. Probably he has the most experience among us with this harrow. Actually, that's from him that we have learned about using this equipment. We also purchased it. It's not perfect, of course. When they do the advertisement, it looks absolutely perfect. Of course, it's not that good as the Western European harrow. It's Ukrainian one. So we had some traces of the tractor wheels, but it was so cool. The effect was really cool. We managed to destroy a lot of these white threads, and our sunflowers are still there intact. We speed it up until we see that the young plants of sunflower go down. It was the 10 kilometers per hour. That's the optimum speed we were able to find for our tractor. We did it very quickly with all our fields, so we understood that the first weeding is easy for us to do. This quick rain, which I mentioned, really helped us. We destroyed quite a lot of white threads. It's not gonna be effective for a long time, of course. Some weeds were still left in the ground, so we had to weed again on this sunflower field. And the next operation was probably when we had the fourth pair of leaves. It was up to your knee height, this sunflower. Even working with this chemical farming approach, when we had it, we would anyway do the inter-row cultivation, because once you do it, it's so visibly well seen how the sunflowers improve their growth after that. When you work on this tall sunflower plants, we normally have only one plate on the cultivator, and it's set up on 45. It's 45 centimeters wide and 15 centimeter and 5 centimeters deep. And we do it really quickly. We lift protective shields to slightly work on the inter-rows to cover the not the inter-rows, the rows. It's gonna be some kind of suppression of cereal weeds, typically cereal weeds. They look quite weak, but they will be there. And our goal now is to cover these weak weeds with soil. So once they are covered, they don't regrow. They are going to die under this soil. So it's going to be our last operation on sunflowers. After that, about 2 weeks later, the plants are going to cover the inter-row spaces, and this sunflower is going to wait until harvesting without operations. We had 2.5 tons per hectare last year. This year we have 3.3 tons per hectare. I think that's gonna be the same at all our fields. So these trunks will be sunflower trunks will stay there in winter. They will winter in the field. The only issue is the fallen seeds, sunflower seeds in the ground. Like I said, the stalks will be wintering in the field. That would help us accumulate snow. A long time ago, when we had wheat and other crops, we used to sow winter crops in October. Also maize. It would grow before snowing up to your knee height, and it would help accumulate snow on the ground. So for the same very purpose, we keep the sunflower stalks on the field for wintering, so that they can accumulate snow during the winter time. Okay. So we inherited this practice from our predecessors, and it's quite good. So the sunflower seeds would directly be exposed to frost, to air, and so on. Then in spring, when we start working, we will have these cutting discs or rolls. Once they wintered these seeds and stalks, they are very, very dry. The soil can be very moist, whereas the stalks are dry. So we press them to the ground, and we will also press the wintered sunflower seeds. After that, we would use harrowing or other type of equipment. Your mic again. Unfortunately, we have very little time. It's very interesting, but we are short of time. So we will harrow this field, and it would be ready for the next crop. What would be your next crop after sunflowers? Excuse me, I have dozens of incoming calls. What's your next crop after sunflowers? After sunflowers, we would have veg. We would have maize for the green mass, or we could have millet, but it's very specific. In agroecology, let me remind you, we have a lot of animal husbandry operations. You said 1,500 animals. Yeah. And this green mass is really necessary. I mean, maize for green mass for animal husbandry is on demand. In other farms, in smaller farms, it's not an option if they don't have animals they keep. Thank you very much. I wanted to show you this rotation harrow. That's how it looks. It might look like. Let me see. Wait a second. I also wanted to show you what's available with these direct elements and with these smaller skewed ends. I've seen some farms. I've been there and seen it with my own eyes when they have rotation harrow with this totally straight elements without any skewing at the end. So farmers kind of prick the soil, the upper layer of soil on a small speed. And I asked him, he said, when they prick it, they have this very direct hole which accumulates morning dew, and this creates enough moist for their crops. For 1 year, they manage to have more moist from the air. Have you seen anything like this in your experience? Because I've seen it. That's how they manage to achieve higher moist rate in the soil. It's quite interesting. I remember reading about it, and it was called atmospheric irrigation for different types of soils, harder and softer soils. So they are kind of accumulating the dew. They put it inside. They help it to be put into the soil. This farmer bought this machine, really absolutely straight pins pricking the soil. They do it in the evening, which creates these small thin holes. And in the morning, when the dew emerges, it kind of accumulates in these holes and help make the soil more moist. I've seen it and it's really impressive. Okay, anyway, thank you very much. Our interpreters are with us strictly to 6 p.m. So we have to finish. Let me remind you that our next meeting would be about biological ways to have pest control in place and disease control. Come and join us next Thursday. We would have an interesting conversation. I'm sure we definitely need to know more about biological methods of pest and disease control. Thank you very much. I'm sure it would be interesting for us to stay 2 hours longer, but that's enough for today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nicolas, for being with us and sharing interesting presentation with us. Thank you, Mykola, Sergii. Thank you, everyone, our practitioners, esteemed practitioners in this organic farming, where they apply academic knowledge into practice. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.